Welcome to session 4 of Little Bang Discovery Plus. Last time we looked at wonderful water and measuring accurately. If you haven't had a chance to have a chat with your adult about what you discovered, please do so now. This session, session 4, is about our precious planet and investigation steps. So first of all, I'd like you to have a chat with your grown-up about what you think you know about how special our planet Earth is. So some of the things you might ask are, what do you need to live? And where does all this come from? Another question is, how do plants help us? And our third question is, where does water come from? So have a little chat with your grown-up now about all those things. Now we're starting this session about our precious planet in a slightly different way. I'm going to read you a story about Goldilocks and the 3 scientists. Goldilocks was a cheeky preschooler whose favourite place was up a tree in her backyard. Recently, a new family had moved in next door. Their young son was also a preschooler and went to Goldilocks' preschool, but was in a different room and she hadn't really got to know him yet. Everyone called the new family the scientists. This puzzled Goldilocks because they didn't look like scientists. They didn't wear lab coats or anything. They just looked ordinary. But they did do weird things. One Saturday at the park, Goldilocks saw them by the garden bed turning over stones and bark chips. Then they looked at things in the dirt through a see-through lollipop. You know that it was really a magnifying lens. And all this before having a go on the swings and slide. The next day, from her spot up in the tree, she saw them doing the same thing in their backyard. But this time they made a square from string first, and it looked like they were drawing stuff. And then one evening, they came outside as the moon rose and looked at it through white tubes, actually telescopes. The scientists often went out together for a short, brisk walk around the neighbourhood. Goldilocks was curious to see inside their place and hatched a plan to pop into their house one day while they were out. They always left by the back door and didn't seem to lock up after themselves. It took a couple of Saturdays before her family was distracted with the baby and she saw from the tree that the scientists were going out for their walk. Now was her chance to sneak over while her family would not miss her. As she suspected, the back door wasn't locked. Goldilocks opened it and went inside. On the table, there were 3 steaming bowls of what looked like sludge, but smelt okay. It was quinoa porridge. She picked up a spoon from the table and tasted the sludge in the biggest bowl. It was so hot, she gulped it down and quickly swallowed a mouthful of cold milk from a glass also on the table. She approached the medium bowl more cautiously and took a small spoonful from the edge of the bowl and blew on it for a short time before trying it. But it was not sweet at all and unpleasant to taste. The littlest bowl looked different to the others. It was covered with stewed fruit and chopped up nuts. Goldilocks tried it. It was just right, and before she knew it, she'd eaten the whole bowl. Goldilocks then noticed some equipment set up on the kitchen island bench. There was one glass with powder in it and another glass with colourless liquid in it. Goldilocks tipped the powder into the glass with the liquid. The liquid rose up right to the top of the glass. Suddenly, it was all over. Too fast, thought Goldilocks. A bit further along the bench, there was a white flower in a glass water, and there was another flower, but it was in red water, and the petals had flecks of red in them. It looked really pretty. So Goldilocks took the flower out of the water and put it into the red water. But nothing happened. Too slow, thought Goldilocks. Then she noticed something stuck to the wall. It had a series of tunnels and tracks and tubes and funnels and bumpers. Below it on the bench was a bowl with marbles. Goldilocks realised it was a marble run. She put a marble at the top and it rolled and spun and bumped all the way down. It was just right. She kept playing with it. Oh, but in her excitement, pulled some of it off the wall. Goldilocks had forgotten that the scientist would be home soon. She decided to have a sit down in the lounge. She threw the newspaper that was in the biggest chair onto the floor and sat down, but it was too hard. She sat in the medium chair, but it was too soft, even after she'd pushed almost all of the cushions onto the floor. She looked at the child-size flip-out sofa bed on the floor, flipped it out and lay down. It was just right. In no time, she had fallen asleep. The scientists came home from their walk, ready to eat their cooled porridge for breakfast. Daddy Scientist said, "Someone has been eating my porridge." Mummy Scientist said, "Someone has been eating my porridge." And Preschool Scientist said, "Someone has been eating my porridge and eaten it all up." The scientists noticed their experiments were disturbed. Daddy Scientist said, "Someone has set off my acid-base reaction." Mummy Scientist said, "Someone has put my control flower into the red-coloured water." And Preschool Scientist said, "Someone has been playing with my marble run and pulled some of it off the wall." They looked around the room. Daddy Scientist said, "Someone has been sitting in my chair and the newspaper is not where I left it." Mummy Scientist noticed nearly all her cushions on the floor and said, "Someone has been sitting in my chair and thrown all my cushions on the floor." The Preschool Scientist cried out, "Someone has been lying in my sofa bed and she is still there." Goldilocks awoke with a start. She jumped up. "I'm sorry," she blurted out. To her surprise, the scientist smiled back at her. The Preschool Scientist started jumping up and down with excitement. "Look, Mummy, Goldilocks is a scientist too." "It's okay, Goldilocks," said Mummy Scientist. "Because we are all curious, we are all really scientists. Science is just a way of asking questions and methodically trying to answer them. Let's get you back home before you get into trouble for wandering off alone." The scientist took Goldilocks home and met Goldilocks' family, and so began a great friendship and lots of shared science fun between both families. And here they are, exploring circular motion together at the park. So Goldilocks kept finding what was just right for her. And that's what our planet is. It's just right. There are so many things about it that are just right, which enable there to be life on this planet. We're just the right distance from the sun so that the temperature is perfect. We've got just the right atmosphere for things to grow here. We've got lots of water, which we need, and we've got rocks and soil for us to grow things in and to live on. And there are many other things about our planet that are just right. So you might hear scientists talk about Goldilocks planets, where they're looking for other just right planets in the universe where life can grow. So that's where the name Goldilocks planet comes from, because everything there is just right. Now, let's talk a bit more about our precious planet and how we can look after it. So what I need you to do now is to get your mandarin or your orange, whichever you've managed to get, and you need clean hands for this one. So I'm just going to sanitize my hands. And we're going to compare our mandarin with this globe of the Earth. So this is our planet. It's not really those colours, But can you see all the blue on the planet? They are all the oceans, and there's a lot of water there. Now, with your mandarin, I'd like you to peel it because we're going to work out why is landfill filling up and why is that such a problem? So you hear about, oh, we're putting all our plastic into landfill even though we think we're recycling it. What's the big deal about that? So let's find out. So we're going to peel our mandarin and keep your peel. So just pop that on your plate for now. This mandarin smells really good. Now, there's quite a few segments there. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 segments. Now, about 71% of our Earth is oceans. So take away 6 of those segments, and they're the oceans. So we can't grow food or live there. So that's no good for us to grow food on. So we've got 3 segments left. Now, one of the segments is where all the forests and shrubs are. So that's the amount of land that is taken up by forests and shrubs. So we can't grow our food there. Put that one there. The next segment is where all the glaciers, the barren land like the deserts, and the built-up areas are. So we can't grow our food there. And the last segment is what we've got left for crops and for livestock. So of the whole globe, of the whole mandarin, this little segment is all that we've got left to grow our food. Now, rather than having the whole segment, because we only can grow things on the outside of the planet, we can't grow things in the middle. So I'd like you to go back to your piece of peel and try and make a piece. Now, here's a good bit. Try and make a piece that is about the size of the outside of this segment. So here's a piece of peel that's roughly the outside of that segment. And of the whole mandarin, this is all that we've got to grow our food on. So you can see why it's really important not to fill it up with rubbish. So we want to try and reduce the amount of rubbish we're sending to landfill. So I'd like you to talk with your grown-up now about how you can or how you do reduce the amount of rubbish that you send to landfill. So do you have a number of different coloured bins and you put your recycling things in one of the bins, so that's not going to landfill? And do you put your green waste, like your lawn clippings and things, in another bin with a special lid colour, so that's not going to landfill? How else can you reduce what you send to landfill? So have a chat with your grown-up now about how you can do that. And while you're doing it, you might like to eat your mandarin. Now, one of the questions I asked you at the start was, how do plants help us? So let's have a look at what seeds need to grow. So we're going to actually do some planting of some seeds and test what they need to grow by putting them in different places. So let's make some little pots like this out of newspaper. So with a sheet of newspaper like this, fold it in half and then fold it in half again. And then, using a cylinder of some sort, I've got a jar that I'm going to use. You're going to put it about 2/3 of the way onto your piece of newspaper, roll it up, okay, fold the bottom in, and you might stick that with some sticky tape. Take it off your jar, and then you might need to use a paper clip to just hold that in place like that. So then you've got a little pot to plant your seeds in. So you need to Make about 5 little pots and have a chat to your grown-up about what you think seeds need to grow. So when you've come up with all the things that you think seeds need to grow and you've made your pots, we'll have a look at how to plant them. Now, once you've decided what your plants need to grow, we need to do some planting and put our pots in certain spots so that we can control what we're giving them. Now, did you decide that your plants do need some things? Perhaps they need some soil to grow in. So you might have a pot with just a seed and see if it grows, because perhaps it will grow even without soil. So that would be one thing to test. You might have a pot with just soil and put your seed in there and see if that's enough. You might have a pot that you put soil and seed and then give it a drink of water and see if it needs water. You might have a pot that you put in soil, the seed, water, and then put it in a sunny spot to see if the sunlight helps. And then you might have a pot where you think of something a bit different. I wonder if it'll grow in the fridge, for example. So that might be a different test condition for you. Now, before we put our soil into our pots, it depends. If you're just collecting dirt from the garden, then you can do that without protective covering. But if you are using potting mix like I've got, then you need to put on a mask, and they're not hard for everybody to have these days, are they? Everyone's got masks, but they don't need to be surgical masks. Just a hardware store mask will do. And you should also put on some gloves, because there can be little microbes in the potting mix that can make you unwell. So if you're using potting mix, then you need to put on this protective gear, but you can keep it to reuse rather than sending it to landfill. Now, I'm going to do a pot without soil, with just a seed in it, to see if it'll grow with nothing. So I'm going to leave that one empty. The rest, I'm going to include soil. So I need to put in about enough soil to about 2/3 of the way up my pot. So I've put in enough potting mix there, about 2/3 of the way up, and then into the next one. And the same with this one. Now, it might be a good idea to write on the outside of your newspaper what you're planning to do with each pot. Unless you can remember, depending upon where you put them, what your test conditions are. Okay, so there's my pots with their soil. Now, we've suggested that you use carrot seeds, because you can get carrot seed for every season, so it doesn't matter what time of the year it is, it should start growing. And another thing is alfalfa sprouts, which also start to grow very quickly. So it just depends what you can get in your supermarket or at the hardware store. You should be able to get carrots. I checked my supermarket, they had carrot seeds, and I also can get this from the nursery or the hardware store. And alfalfa was from the nursery or the hardware store. So something like this is what you need to grow your pots. You might also find rocket, which is called rocket because it grows so fast. So that's another good one that you might try. So what you need to do with your seeds, they're really, really small. So inside inside this envelope, there'll be a little packet with the seeds in them. So if you cut the top off, you might actually like to use a little spoon just to get out a few, because there's a lot in there and they're very tiny. So here I've got some seeds, And what you need to do in your pot is just make a little hole. You might make a couple of little holes with your finger, just press a little hole in and then put just a couple of seeds in each spot and cover it over. So you can go ahead and put in your seeds, make a little hole with your finger, put in your seeds, cover them over, and then you need to decide what you're going to do. So this one that doesn't have any soil in, I'm just going to put a couple of seeds in there and see if they will grow with nothing. So that one I can just set somewhere where it won't get tipped over. This next one has got seeds and soil. I'm just going to leave that one too. I'm not going to add any water or do anything more to it to see if that's enough for the plant to grow. This next one I'm going to add some water to. Now the newspaper is, you can't flood it or else the newspaper will go mushy and your little seed might get washed away. So what it might be a good idea to do is to use your pipette or your straw or your syringe from your Discovery Plus box, and you might also want to sit it in something so that if it does leak it won't make a mess, and you might just water it gently with your pipette until it feels damp to touch. Okay, so that one I would leave sitting just inside the room. This one I would do the same thing. I would give it a drink, but then I might put it outside or put it on a very sunny windowsill so that it gets lots of sunshine, and see if the direct sun makes a difference. And then this one I'm going to put it in the fridge and see if, because it's mostly dark in there, so it won't be getting much sunlight, and when the light turns on, that's not very often in the day, so it's mostly in the dark, and it's also cold in there. So does that make a difference to how well the plant will grow? So they're my test conditions, but you can make up your own, whatever you would like to do. All right, so now you might like to do a drawing of your pots, and it would be really good when your plants start to grow, in your discovery diary, it would be really good to write down how many days it takes before one of the plants, you can see it poke its little head through. And also it would be really good to then measure it with your ruler each day to see how tall it grows. So you can include all of that in your discovery diary for each test condition to see which is the best conditions for the plants to grow. And you might even draw a graph of it to show day 1, day 2, day 3, and have different colours for the different plants. Okay, so that's our plant experiment. Now I'd like you to, if you've finished planting things, which I now have, you can take off your mask and gloves, but I'm going to keep them to use the next time I do some planting. What I'd like you to do now is to talk to your grown-up about why Earth is so precious, why our planet is so precious, and why we should take care of it. So is there anything that you've learnt today, perhaps from our mandarin demonstration, or looking at what you think plants might need to grow? Why should we take good care of our resources on our planet? So have a little chat about that. Now, the extra activities that we've got for you this week is to keep an eye on your plant experiment. So keep watering the one that needs watering, so you can touch it and see if it's moist. If it's moist, it doesn't need more water. If it's dried out, it does. Watering it gently. So keep an eye on the different test conditions and if that makes a difference to how well the plants grow. Now, depending upon the time of year and the seeds that you've chosen, some of the plants might pop up in a couple of days. Some of them might take a week or more. So just be patient with them. If they don't start to grow that you can see, remember the little seeds are growing roots down in the ground that you can't see. Before they put their shoots up, they've done a whole lot of growing underneath. So if they're taking a little bit of time to grow, then stay patient and wait a little bit longer to see if they will shoot for you. So you can measure your plants and care for them and make a graph. Another thing that I'd like you to try is, we've talked a bit about water last session and also today, how much of the earth is water, but not much of it is drinking water. A lot of it is oceans that we can't drink. And it costs a lot of money to desalinate the water for us to make it drinking water. So we shouldn't waste water, our drinking water. So one of the things you can do is time how long you are in the shower for. So it should only be 3 or 4 minutes. Get somebody to time how long you are in there for and how much water are you using while you're showering. Or having a bath, how much water do you have? A really full bath? Do you share the bath with your siblings? How much water are you using there? And the other thing that you can do is go for a walk and just observe how amazing our world is. So have a look at all the different colours you can see. Have a look at all the different textures you can see. Have a look at, try and detect all the different smells you can smell. What can you hear as you go for your walk? What can you see as you go for your walk? And if you actually are mindful of what's around you, you'll be pretty amazed at what there is to see on our precious planet. So we've got experiments to go on with and growing things, which is good fun. And just spend a bit of time between now and next session observing how amazing our planet is and how it's really worthwhile us looking after it.